Hello, my spooky friends, and welcome back to my channel. Today I have another true crime ASMR video for you to enjoy. Today's video is another recommended video by none other than Miss KimmyCups. And she had actually recommended like 5 cases altogether. And as you may know, I love to please, so we will of course be covering each of these recommended cases by her. We have done 2 so far. And in the midst of me writing this script, Alice had recommended another true crime case. So we will be doing these 2 for Kimmy, taking a break and doing one from Alice. And then we will revisit and go down the line of Miss KimmyCup's recommendations. So, as always, if you have recommendations for future video topics, please let me know in the comments below. So, never second guess recommending something. I love hearing your input, and I'm always willing to educate myself and others on these cases. No case deserves to be unknown, and in every case, it's a story of someone's life, and in a lot of cases, their last moments in this life. And I believe it's important to bring attention to these cases and the people involved, as no one should ever be forgotten. So, today we will be covering the disappearance of Lars Mittank. And if I'm mispronouncing his name, I do apologize. There are a lot of theories on this case, and I will include my own at the end of this video. But Lars Mittank was a German native who went with a group of friends to enjoy a vacation in Varna, Bulgaria. This was in the summer of 2014. Lars and his friends were trying to make the most of the city's nearby beaches, bars, and they were just trying to have some fun. But everyone would come home besides Lars. Lars was born and raised in Marne, Germany, and had a very stable home life. He grew up in Itzau, Schleswig-Holstein, and lived there for his entire life. He worked at a power plant, had friends, and had a partner. He visited his parents frequently. After his father suffered a stroke, he often helped at his parents' home after work. He was described as a normal person. He showed no signs of wanting to escape the life he'd built for himself, nor exhibiting any mental health struggles. However, while vacationing in Bulgaria, Lars went from a fun-loving, outgoing man to one that was ravaged by paranoia and fear. His sudden switch in persona preceded his abrupt vanishing. The group was vacationing at Golden Sands Resort, which was close to the Black Sea coast. It was a popular area for young people who wanted to party, causing some travelers to call it the Ibiza of the Black Sea. The European getaway was the picture of fun, and the friends were intent on making it a memorable summer, which it would end up being, albeit for all the wrong reasons. On June 30th, 2014, 28-year-old Lars traveled with his 5 friends to Varna, Bulgaria. It was his first journey outside of Germany. The group vacationed at the Golden Sands. This was a very popular seaside resort. His friend Paul Roman stated, "The week went by really fast." Paul said that they would relax on the beach, swim in the pool, play football, went clubbing, and said that Lars was really relaxed. He was in a good mood. Another friend, Tim Schultz, said that Lars didn't eat much and that he would have only a small bowl of soup or a small salad at a time. His friends reported no additional abnormal behavior by Lars until the final part of the trip. For most of their week-long trip, Lars and his friends made the most of the cheap alcohol, played football on the beachfront, and enjoyed the atmosphere. They were just being men having a good time in the summer on vacation. It was the World Cup semi-finals, and Lars was a big football fan. So were many of the other tourists who made their way to the warmer climates of Bulgaria to watch the sport as it played on big screen TVs in pubs and bars. On July 6th, 2014, the day before they were supposed to return home, Lars and his companions were at a bar in town, and Lars would get into a disagreement with some other German nationals over football. Lars, who was a fan of the football club SV Werder Bremen, had differences with fans of FC Bayern Munich. Lars, a Werder Bremen supporter, decided to have some fun with some Bayern Munich supporters by switching the team's flags around on their tables. Eventually, the group left the bar and headed to a restaurant for some food. Lars, however, took a rain check, telling his friends he wasn't hungry, and disappeared for the rest of the night. Lars turned up at the resort the following morning and told his friends he was beaten up by 4 men hired by the group in the bar whom he disagreed with the night before. The fight resulted in Lars suffering an injured jaw and a ruptured eardrum. He went and saw a doctor who advised him not to fly due to his injury. The doctor would then prescribe him the antibiotic cefprozil. Lars's friends wanted to stay with him, but he insisted he was fine on his own and told them to follow the original travel plan and fly home on July 7th, which they did. Since the group had to be out of the Viva Club hotel by midday that day, Lars had to find alternative accommodation for the rest of his solo stay in Bulgaria. Eventually, he chose the hotel color. The pickings were slim for hotels due to the World Cup taking place. So unless Lars was willing to pay a premium, there were few places for him to stay. The hotel was in an area unfamiliar to Lars, and the surroundings could be described as rundown, particularly in comparison to the area he was in prior. Still, it was cheap and it was near the airport. A day after his friends left, Lars was acting strange and pretty paranoid. While at the hotel, Lars would call his mother Sandra, and in a whisper, he told her that people were trying to kill or rob him, and that she should cancel his credit cards. The closed-circuit television cameras in the hotel recorded him pacing up and down the halls, looking out windows and hiding in an elevator. At 1 a.m., he left the hotel before returning about an hour later. It is not known what he did in the hour that he was gone, but in the morning he once again called his mother, telling her that the people pursuing him were getting closer. Concerned by her son's panicked call, Lars's mother booked him on a flight home for the following day. The mother and son would have multiple calls throughout the early hours, with Lars's mistrust only seeming to get worse. In one call, he asked her what was in Cefprozil, the tablets he had been prescribed to help his ear. It could have been that Lars was beginning to feel that these tablets may be causing paranoia, which is labeled as a very rare side effect. This may have caused him to lean toward the belief that men were going to murder him. Regardless, Lars's state of mind was only going to get worse. His concerned mother advised her son to visit the airport doctor once he had checked in, which Lars agreed to. In the taxi on the way to the airport, the woman he shared the lift with noticed that Lars' pupils were dilated and described him as urgently wanting to get to the airport. Once he arrived at Varna Airport, Lars called his mother once again and told her he had made it, and she said that he seemed relieved and somewhat surprised to have made it there. Since he'd gotten his mother to block his credit and debit cards, Lars had no access to money. So he asked Sandra to send 500, I believe euros is the currency, but needless to say, he asked her to use Western Union to send him money. The pair hung up the call so the funds could be transferred, although it was really unclear why Lars would need such a large sum of money just to travel home. While he waited for the money, he visited the airport doctor, as his mother had suggested. Lars was seen by Dr. Costa Castau, who noticed the man was unsettled and fidgeting constantly, especially with his hands. After taking a closer look at his ear, the doctor advised that Lars shouldn't fly for another week or so. He also offered him pain relief to ease the aching, but Lars refused. Lars's session with the doctor lasted around 45 minutes until a construction worker abruptly entered the consultation room without knocking. This startled Lars, who became even more unsettled than he was. Lars would rise from his seat and out of nowhere would state, "I don't want to die here." He then got up and fled the office. He left behind all of his luggage, which included his wallet, cell phone, and passport. He was captured by airport security cameras fleeing the terminal. Once outside, he can be seen on the footage jogging away from the airport, climbing a fence, running into a meadow, and sprinting off camera in the direction of an adjacent forest. Those are his last confirmed whereabouts on July 8th, 2014. After a while, it became apparent that something was wrong, and Lars's mother reported him missing to the German embassy. The police were called, and the CCTV trail led officers to the sunflower field where Lars was last seen. A thorough search and cadaver dogs found nothing to suggest Lars had been there. Lars's mom headed to Bulgaria to aid in the search for her son, but there were no leads to follow. Sandra Mittank was, she stated that it was like the earth swallowed her son up. There is no definitive agreement among experts and family members as to the causes of Lars's behavior, and Lars's mother, alongside Bulgarian and German doctors, have suspected that Lars's unusual behavior was the result of a rare side effect from the antibiotic cefprozil. Cefprozil is considered a cephalosporin. It has been known to induce psychotic side effects, including hallucinations and paranoia. However, according to Kostov, which is the doctor that had seen him, Mittank had not been taking his medication. The doctor stated he didn't take those antibiotics. He didn't even fill out his prescription, Kostov said. So his behavior couldn't have been a result of the antibiotic cefprozil. The doctor even said that there was no real explanation that he had for Lars acting that way in the office. Lars's mother said that Lars had no history of mental illness. However, a mental breakdown caused by an undiagnosed mental illness has been discussed. It is also unknown to what happened to Lars after he fled the airport. With the police unable to determine Lars's fate, Sandra, his mother, hired a private investigator, Andreas Gutik. He checked hospital records for patients without ID, but found nothing. Lars had experience in hunting, fishing, and trapping, but there is skepticism about whether he would have been able to survive for long outdoors due to intense heat in the summers and lack of food. His mother has expressed belief that Lars is still alive, possibly having lost his memory. I don't know where she got that from. About a year after his disappearance, a truck driver thought he saw him hitchhiking in Varna. There have been multiple reported sightings of him in several other countries, but none have been confirmed. In 2019, a German truck driver gave a hitchhiker a ride from Dresden to Schildow in Oberhavel, Brandenburg. The driver became aware of the Lars case later and said that the man with him resembled an older version of Lars. The driver said that the man had long hair and a beard. He said that his eyes seemed tired and his cheekbones were prominent. Lars has been described as the most famous missing person on YouTube. By May 2018, less than 4 years after his disappearance, the security footage of him in the airport had been viewed more than 16 million times. The mysterious nature of the case has led to frequent discussions and the growth of numerous theories. It has been suggested that Lars may have found his way to a rural area of Bulgaria and set up a new life for himself. In certain areas of the country, particularly in 2014, things like cell phones were considered a luxury and not readily available. This means it would be unlikely the people who lived here would see the press coverage of this missing persons case. There were a lot of places he could have set up home here, such as old abandoned houses or stables, and plenty of substance for him to live off, such as wild berries. This theory can perhaps be squashed when you consider Lars had a family he loved back home, a loving partner, and a career he enjoyed. Now, this has been stated so many times when I read this case, and we'll wait till the end of the video. Anyway, with Lars's frame of mind being in question at the time of his disappearance, it seems even the most far-fetched theories that have been considered. There have also been suggestions that Lars may have tragically died of exposure. The Bulgarian weather in July can be unforgiving, especially when you're not protected from the sun. However, this theory raises the question, if the elements got to Lars, where is the body? Another theory suggests a cover-up of what really happened with Lars in order to protect the Bulgarian tourism industry. And this is to avoid fear and trepidation about visiting the tourist destination. It's been theorized that whatever sinister situation Lars found himself in was covered up. There are a number of other dark theories too. One of them proposes that Lars was a forced drug mule. This theory goes back to the night Lars' friends all went for food without him. He disappeared for hours that night before turning up the next morning with an injured ear. People think that he was forced to take drugs by a Bulgarian or possibly a Russian gang, hoping he would transport the drugs internally to Germany. This would explain Lars's hesitancy to fly home. Another of the more macabre theories is that Lars was bought for his organs. This theory speculates that for black market trafficking rings, a fit, young, healthy man like Lars would be an ideal target. In September 2014, 3 people came forward to say they'd seen Lars in Varna. They identified him from the pictures circulating on the news and were confident the man they spotted was Lars. Subsequently, a reward of 40,000 euros was put up for information that led to the successful relocation of Lars. Nothing came of these sightings. And even more so, more multiple sightings have been reported, though the clues have not led to Lars. Lars's story to his friends about being beaten up has also been dissected. Nobody saw this fight he said he was in, and no witnesses to this have come forward, leaving his friends to feel like Lars may have been covering up the real reason he didn't make it back to the hotel that night. Though Lars wasn't known to be dishonest, his friends felt something was off about his story when he returned to the hotel the next morning. Which, to be fair, I find it off that his 7 friends, 7 of them left him behind. Like, not one of them made sure to stay with him when Lars clearly needed someone. Lars's mother, Sandra, continues to put up missing persons posters in the hopes someone will find her son. As of 2024, he would be in his late 30s. So, that is today's video on the disappearance of Lars Mittank. As far as my thoughts on this one, I'm honestly leaning towards a psychotic break, either drug-related, possibly. Lars was given something that caused a mental break. I mean, some drugs, when they are taken, even when the taker knows what to expect, it can cause psychotic breaks. And that could have happened here. And Lars died running from pretty much himself. But there is another interesting theory where people are really interested in the fight that occurred with Lars the night before they were supposed to come home. I do believe that it's possible that Lars, who was clearly jumped and beat the crap out of, and who knows who Lars was when drunk, and a lot of people just don't have the tolerance for a drunk person, and this is during football season, and Lars clearly, I don't know about you, but I don't go to countries, and there's 2 rules in mixed company. One is you do not talk about politics within reason, or sports. People who are heavy in both of these things can get violent. They, a lot of people see it as insulting when you go against what they believe is the best thing at the time, especially in football. I just don't think, I think it's very clear that Lars was a risk taker and kind of a troublemaker by switching those flags. Like, to me, that's just distasteful. And doing that in a country where, you know, like, the Russian mob and other gangs are involved. I just don't think that's a good idea for anybody to do. And at 28 years old, Lars was old enough to know. I go back and forth on what I think happened here, because I think there's multiple possibilities on what could have happened. I do think that the possibility that Lars was just looking for a way out of his life is also possible. When I look at this case, I rarely see this partner that he was so in love with. I just think there's a lot going on here that isn't really presented. When I look at the home life, it always says it's stable, and I just think that there's more here than what we have been given. I'm telling you, I go back and forth on this theory. When I write my scripts, I started not even writing my thoughts, because I'll write my thoughts separately and then kind of like debate with myself, because it's just so difficult with some of these cases. I do think it is possible that Lars found a way to leave his life and start anew. But I do believe it's possible that he got involved with drugs and the mob. But the one that leads me more towards drugs being involved is the lady who rode in the cab. She stated that his eyes were very dilated, and just the bizarre behavior. I don't think this was caused by the antibiotic. As the doctor had stated, Lars had never even filled his prescription. I do think drugs were involved, because he was just acting bizarre, and the way he acted, him bolting from the doctor's office, there's just a lot of fishy things going on here. And I do think that when we get involved with tourist destinations, it gets even foggier, because I think a lot of these companies are run by people who have no morals, in the sense that they don't care about crimes like these. I think at the end of the day, the body of Lars was covered, and what really happened has been covered up. Something isn't lining up here, because his body would have been found. Okay, so my final theory, I have done this a couple times now, because my theory for this is just so, it's hard. I believe that, first of all, Lars was not as friendly with this group of friends as we are being made to believe. With Lars, that's a group of 8, and no one stays with him. Even at the bar, it seems to me like Lars was just a troublemaker, and maybe a different person when under the influence, because you got 7 people and they were just like, yeah, go frolic while we go home. I'm just saying. I do believe at the end of the day that this is something that most definitely deals with drugs. Either, I do believe that he was either forced into drug muling or had taken up a new hobby while on vacation that one night and got mixed up with the wrong people. Because him not wanting to leave any trail of his name by canceling his cards and wanting everything in cash and having his mother send him $500, I don't know, 500 euros, which I'm not sure how much that equates to in American dollars, but as from what I've read, it's a lot. He didn't want a trail of what he was doing or where he was going. And then the bizarre behavior. I think it's very possible that he, especially with dilated pupils, he never filled his antibiotic prescription. Drug abuse was definitely here and present in this room. So I think for that much is certain. But I think it's possible that he got mixed up with the Russian mob or a mob, whoever, because a whole man does not just disappear without a trace in a tourist attraction. Someone saw him, and I just believe that this is something that was covered up. We see it often with tourism destinations where people go missing and it's covered so that they don't get bad publicity. So I'm not saying this is definitely what happened, but this is my guess. But it is also possible that he just wanted a whole new life, and we don't know these people. Like, that's the thing, is that to me, the home life of a person is the most telling signs of who they are. How someone functions at home, how their family life is, their relationships, all of this, like, ambiguity, I think that's the word. No, not ambiguity. But all these people besides his mom don't really, they're like aloof almost. It's just very different and does not give what I think Sandra is trying to portray Lars as, personally. I'm not saying he was a terrible person, but I just think there's more here that we are unaware of. But at the end of the day, drugs was present. That is my, most definitely, there were drugs. That is one definitive thing in this whole case, is that there were drugs. Whether Lars knew of what he was taking or not, a lot of people, they take drugs knowing the side effect, and the side effect goes wrong and causes psychotic breaks. And let alone he is in a completely foreign area where there's just a lot here that could be going on, but at the end of the day, drugs were involved. And I think that's about as many times as I can say drugs in the span of, 5 minutes? 2? Around there. I would love to know your thoughts on this case in the comments below. And let me know if you think it was drugs. We'll say it again, drugs. I think a lot of the time there's a lot of the biggest factor in these cases are what's going on at home. And Whenever I look at these, they always are like, their home life was stable. For the ones that something was definitely off. But anyhow, I could babble on for days, which hopefully you are already sleeping by now. So, my spooky friends, I will be adding this video, as always, to my True Crime ASMR series playlist. This is where you can find past and future videos in this series. Thank you so much to KimmyCup Reacts. I have linked her channel in my previous video, The Disappearance of Kyron Horman. I'm sure you will probably see her in the comments below. Never fails, and it makes me very happy to see a lot of you stopping by and taking the time to tell me your thoughts and just pop in. I enjoy it very much. So, thank you so much for hanging out with me today in this spooky safe space that we have created together. I will be more consistent with you. My renovations we're getting there. And it's not as loud, and I have more ability to record and not want to peel my face off. You never notice how many sounds are in your household until you have a microphone in front of you that doesn't necessarily pick up everything, but always seems to pick up what you don't want it to pick up. And I'm sure you heard background noise in this video. I have 6 animals. It's very unavoidable, but I take pride in having my 4 cats and 2 dogs who I love very dearly. And I hope that that doesn't deter you from enjoying my content. So, without ado, thank you so much, and I will see you next time.